and skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take.
Well, what a warm welcome. Thank you, Seville. Thank you for having me here to represent the U.S. Who here is afraid when they hear the word cybersecurity? There must be some people who are afraid, right? A lot of people are always concerned about cybersecurity. They wonder, what does that mean? How is it going to impact me? And what we really want to look at is, why is it so scary? You know, the last century, safety was a big issue. You know, for the last 100 years, with the Industrial Revolution, and a lot of expansive use of electronic technology to drive economic value in business, you started to see a lot of technology coming into place. And people were worried. They were worried about, would it catch on fire? Would it electrocute me? Cause some kind of mechanical harm? That's some of the basics of safety engineering. But today, I was looking, and I saw everyone here in the back has smartphones. Everyone here probably has tablets. You have your televisions, you have your stereo systems at home, and in a commercial world, you have lighting, you have building automation, you have HVAC systems, energy management systems. So who here thinks those will catch on fire? Who here thinks when they buy a smart thermostat and install it in their house that it'll electrocute them? Most of us don't. And the reason for that is because we believe that industry has done a phenomenal job with safety. And they have. We're not concerned about it. And the reason for that is industry has been working on safety for an entire generation, or even 2 generations. The whole century last gone. You go to school today and study electrical engineering, you learn about safety. You learn how to space electronic hardware, you learn how to avoid arcs, and it becomes built into your DNA. And as a consumer, you buy products today and you feel they're safe. You expect it to be safe. Why don't we do that for cyber? Why are we not saying it should be secure? Well, there's a reason for that. How long did safety come about? It took 100 years. You know, it's only in the 1960s or so they started coming out with what do you call GFCIs? The ability to plug in equipment and not shock yourself. A little bit of technology, but it was only available in the 1960s. What happened prior to the 1960s is people were hurting themselves. So do you think people were buying hair dryers like crazy? No. You saw in the movies, somebody's dropping on a bathtub and somebody will get electrocuted, it'll short the entire house. So people weren't doing it. But now, you can buy a hairdryer. I go into, into your fiance's room, and you go in and you see it in the bathroom, and it's laying all out on the bathroom counter, and water is splatting all over, and there's no concern. And why is that? Again, because we as consumers expect safety. We demand it. 2 years ago in the US, there was a significant issue with smartphone. And the batteries would potentially catch on fire. So within 30 days in the US, all airplanes, when you boarded the plane, the airplanes had certain equipment, and it would scan the entire plane. And if it detected that smartphone, that particular model, it meant it was turned on. And the airline attendants would get on the phone and say, someone has model X. And the law says you have to turn it off because it is a safety issue. And within 2 months, that smartphone manufacturer resolved the issue. Why is that? Within 30 days, somebody took action because a phone was catching on fire. It's because we expect that not to happen. Now, in the next 2 years, you're going to have billions of things connected. I have about 30 connected devices in my home. All kinds of stuff. I'm one of the early adopters. I love gadgets. It's a small town I live in that only has 800 people, so I wouldn't say the town, but I'm kind of not concerned somebody's going to break in and do anything. So I like to experiment and buy stuff. I buy smart locks for the door so I can unlock it and have somebody come in and do some work. I buy smart blinds and stuff. At no time in my entire time remodeling that house, I was worried about that equipment causing fire. Now, am I worried that they would steal some of my personal data? Yeah. Am I worried that somebody could break in and into that system and get into the house? Yeah. Is Europe worried about that too? GDPR. They were. So why are we as consumers not accepting a safety issue, but accepting a cybersecurity issue? It's because right now in this century, cybersecurity is the baby. Safety is the adult. And the concepts of safety, which is electrical shock, harm, fire, probably something chemical, are now expanding. The concepts of safety in this century now means that you don't want your personal data stolen. The concepts of safety, if you have an organization or a business and you install some equipment, is that you don't want someone to use that equipment to pivot into your facility to do something else. So now the concept of public safety is expanding because the whole world is becoming connected. And that means more and more and more opportunity for economic development and economic value. But we as consumers have to start saying, I want things to be more secure, because that's what I'm looking for from safety. Because now my concept of safety includes cyber. So now you look at traditional HVAC, refrigeration systems, building management systems, energy management systems, and what you tend to see is they're becoming more and more connected. With that connection, we now have to, as an industry and as a consumer base, determine what are our concepts of safety there. How did safety 100 years ago expand? It expanded with science and then standards. How can I fly from Chicago, beautiful Chicago, it's beautiful now, give it another month, it's going to get cold, and come here to warm and beautiful Seville, and still plug in my computer? It's because I know there's a standard that tells me what that plug looks like. So over the next few decades, what you're going to see within industry are the hundreds of standards starting to form, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in North America, whether it's in Asia, and all coming together with industry folks who can really talk about where the standards and specifications for cybersecurity matter. And the focus has to be on, is it safe? But for the 21st century, that concept of safety is significantly more. I travel a lot, talk to a lot of C-suite folks, and the security guys always ask me, we need you to come in to talk to the C-suite guys because we need you to convince them to spend more money. I was at a trade show and talking to a small manufacturing plant. And they're like, where do I start? I don't know anything about cyber. I said, do you know safety? They're like, everything we do is safety. I'm like, start there. Start with the concepts that you recognize as safety, but expand what safety means in this century. So safety traditionally has been environmental. Am I using the right equipment, the right components that would work in this right environment, the right heat, the right humidity, the right temperature for longevity to run for 10 hours, 10 days, 10 months? Cybersecurity, it's a little bit different. There's about 3 main components for cyber. And these 3 main components now start to impact the risk for safety for your organization and for, as a consumer, your choices. First one are the threats. You know what they are? they're the bad guys. It could be a nation state, it could be a criminal organization, it could be a competitor, it could be a slacker, hobbyist like me, just buying stuff, breaking it as much as I can. They have to have the wherewithal and the intent to do something. The second element are the vulnerabilities. Are there flaws designed into the system that would make the threat, the bad actor, circumvent any controls that you put in to be safe? And third and final is the asset or the opportunity. The bad guy has found a weakness in your system. Why is he going to go after it? He needs to have some kind of value that he wants to take. And what does that mean? Maybe he's a competitor and he wants to get into your system and he's going to pivot through one thing to get all the way to figure out how are you doing your production. Maybe he's a criminal organization. He wants to lock down your production and ask you to pay him a ransom called ransomware. Maybe it's a nation state trying to give a competitive edge to one of their companies or trying to do harm to the economy of that region or country where that business is operating. These are the important parts where now you have to look at safety is now impacted by these. It's no longer impacted by are we in the correct temperature, are we in the correct room, are we in the correct humidity. And you take those risks around cyber and you treat them just like you did safety 100 years ago. You start with standards, you start with guidelines. You start with assessing that risk. You start with doing tests, evaluating it. Remember I said cybersecurity is the baby here. And we all have a responsibility to nurture that baby so it grows up. And the reason why is eventually when you get to the point where you can assess the cybersecurity risk and feel comfortable with it, consumers like us will expect it to be secure because that's your new concept of safety. And that's what we need to do as consumers. We have to demand it. We have to expect it. Don't expect also the organization to turn all around and deliver it 100% within 2 days. Expect it to grow over time. But we have to recognize when there's challenges and risks and attacks that are occurring, how are we going to react to that as a general consumer? So in essence, one takeaway you can have here is that the concept of safety for this 21st century is expansive now because of the connectivity and security of connected systems. And we as consumers have to recognize that and demand that so those concepts of safety will be something that's now inside the products and systems that we buy today. Thank you.